Hey again, everyone. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football on a Thursday night. So that means we're talking Nebraska here at 6 o'clock Eastern and 5 o'clock Central with Greg Peterson from Husker Online. We also have Chris Wall joining us from Husker Hype and Zach Reeder from Fifth Quarter College Football. How are we doing tonight, everyone?
What's up, guys?
Doing good.
Yeah, doing good.
Everybody else.
All right. Before we move on to Purdue and some recruiting news, also some departures to report and discuss, let's get our final take on Iowa. Put that one to bed. 26-20 wasn't the worst performance of the season, considering that Illinois game. It was another loss, but disappointing how it finished, not being able to see Adrian Martinez and the offense operate in the red zone to see what they could do against that Hawkeye defense with the game on the line. But final thoughts, Greg.
Well, you and I talked about it on Saturday in depth, and on Friday, and pretty much the same thing. I liked the effort that I saw out of the team. Just too many mistakes. Bottom line, they always have to shoot themselves in the foot. Seems like 3 in a row against Iowa that are just come down to the last minute when they have a chance to win the game in all 3 of them. And, I know for a fact that the team didn't take it very well. So they're upset. And hopefully that translates out on the field Saturday at Purdue. But, you saw the defense played good enough to win that game, easily. The offense needs to – you got to score touchdowns. Every time you get in the red zone, it's kick a field goal. It's, you're moving the ball a lot, but, from 20 to 20, you got to punch it in after that. So, defense puts them in a position to win the game. And then you get a bad, Matt Farniok just blows the block right there. Sack, fumble, game over. Interception, I guess it was. But, game over. No chance to win it after that. So, same old thing. It looks like every year. And but obviously the effort was a lot better than it was the week before against Illinois. So, hopefully they can build on that and go to West Lafayette and take on a tough Purdue team.
Everybody in the live chat, want to let you know that if you leave your comments, your questions, any debate topics that you have, certainly just drop them right in there. I'll be scanning the live chat and we will serve them up. And also remember that Nebraska Live is brought to you by the fine folks and Husker fans at Phone Genie. Go to ToleyBrothersLLC.com, ToleyBrothersLLC.com. You see the URL there on the banner. Tolley Brothers provides serious germ mitigation efforts for both home and workspace. Zach, your thoughts about the Hawkeyes game?
Yeah, a little bit of the good and the bad. You still see a lack of vertical pass game from the Husker offense. Just not very many shots taken, and if there is, it hasn't been successful. But I think the one good thing you saw on the defense was seeing the progression of a guy like Damian Daniels. He stepped up and had a monster game. The D-line has continued to progress, in my opinion, and I think that's something good to look forward to for the Husker defense.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's just a game, that you've seen so many times from this team. It just seems like we've seen this exact game. Special teams is just lacking. There's just it sputters with the offense from time to time, and the defense puts them in position to win games. So it just seems like a game we've seen so many times before. I was really impressed with the defensive line. Stopping the run game with Iowa and winning in the trenches was obviously one of the bigger tasks that they had ahead of them this game, and the defense really stepped up, put them in position. Like Zach said, Damian Daniels had a huge game. Linebackers still running fast. Doman had a great game again. But it's just finding that 1 or 2 plays there at the end. Can you hit 1 or 2 big plays to win the game? That winning play, we just don't seem to have that. And instead, with all things considered, there's a minute 30 where on their side of the field, I think, with a timeout left, and we turn the ball over. So just, in position to possibly win the game, and, you turn it over. I watch this team, and sometimes they're just so incredibly good at being really bad at times with you think about penalties and snaps, and not necessarily penalties in general, but just at certain times penalties happening. And I mean, credit Iowa in their punt game. They got us down there on the one time, but then you look at our punt returns, and we're dropping punts, and there's no returns, and it's just kind of a mess there. So again, I thought in a position to win the game, and just couldn't come up with those couple big plays to make it happen.
You mentioned the issue with snapping the football, and that goes back to one particular person. And Juergens had his issues there in the first half, and it's just and I hate to single out one guy, but they are just practically drive killers. When you got that one play that creates that kind of negative yardage on one play, it pretty much kills the drive 90-some% of the time. It's, from a probability standpoint, almost impossible to overcome a 2nd and 29, for example. That was one of the incidents. So was that particular position addressed in regards to any changes?
Yeah, Coach Frost has been asked about it. But you're absolutely right. They're a very nice looking drive, and then all of a sudden, that snap goes over Martinez's head, and it's over after that. Just the momentum just gets crushed. But Coach Frost, he stands by his guy right now. When he was asked about Cam, he pretty much said that the reason that he's in there is because his explosiveness and his power coming out of that position and his athletic ability, it just makes them a better team. Now, it doesn't make them a better team when the snaps are going over the quarterback's head, for sure, and it just disrupts everything. And we saw this with him early last year. He got it fixed. So it's so difficult to put a finger on exactly why he's having these problems, but you got to stick with it. You got to keep getting reps. You got to keep getting game reps, and sooner or later, it's going to have to start working. It's going to click sooner or later because I know Cam. I know him well. I've covered him since he was a ninth grader, and he's a tremendous athlete, and he's a proud guy, and he'll get it fixed. And he feels worse about it than anybody does. So it's just something that's going to take time to work out.
Talking Nebraska football, that's what we do every Thursday night here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So we would ask in return for that you hit the like button, start there. Also understand that this is possible because of sponsorships. This is also possible because of individual contributions. So we lean on you for that. So please show your appreciation. We got Greg Peterson on the line, as we always do, talking Husker football from Husker Online on Rivals. Zach Reeder from Fifth Quarter College Football, and Chris Wall from Husker Hype. So, Greg, we had a departure or two this week. I'm looking for the list here. Maybe you can help me out in regards to who announced their departures from the program.
Defensive back Ronald Delancey was the first one. And then here the other day, wide receiver Marcus Fleming parted ways with the program as well. So, a little bit of discontent going on there. Guys just not having a fit, apparently. I think, Delancey actually had tweeted out, a tweet that he probably shouldn't have sent out, being critical about the Illinois game and pointing out that some of the young guys needed to get out there and get some playing time. And So I think that might have been a mutual deal there. And Marcus Fleming, who knows what's going on there. If you asked me, it's probably a playing time thing. And I mean, he was getting playing time, but it's so hard in this day and age. You don't want to have to blame something like a COVID thing, but this guy, he came a long way here. And there's really right now there's nothing to do. You're stuck with your teammates 24/7. You can't go out. You can't go have a good time. The town is dead right now. So really, it's a very weird situation that we're dealing with here, and maybe he just needed to be closer to home, and it's just something that it's hard to put a finger on, and only Coach Frost and his coaching staff really know what was going on there. So a couple of those guys there, and I see Navy Thomas there was commenting about a lot of these Florida guys, and it really has been kind of a problem. I mean, because Nebraska has recruited the state of Florida really well the last few years under Coach Frost. 2018 they had 6 commitments from the state of Florida. 2019 they didn't have any, but then in 2020 they had 7. Out of those 13 commits from the state of Florida, there are 3 on the team still. Cornerback Braxton Clark, defensive back Taman Lynham, and running back Marvin Scott. So, you're a lot of high ranked kids leaving the program, going back to 2018, Miles Jones, CJ Smith, Dominic Watt, Justin McGriff, Willie Canty. Those are all guys that a lot of them went the JUCO route. And then from last year's class, Marcus Fleming, like I just mentioned, he's the latest one to go. Cornerback Francois, safety Henry Gray, linebacker Keyshawn Green, and then Ronald Delancey, like I mentioned. So, yeah, the state of Florida, it's just right now, you're trying to recruit high athletic guys, and high character guys. And, it's sometimes you miss on these guys. So it's just, it's hard to point a finger on that too. And you just got to keep on recruiting guys, and you hope that you can keep them around. Like I said, it's just a strange year now because it's just not a normal season. It's not a normal college year for student athletes. So it's just hard to put a finger on it right now.
Marcus Fleming was the 44th rated wide receiver in the country, number 42 player out of Florida, out of Northwestern High School out of Miami. So I'll leave it up to Zach and to Chris in regards to basically taking this 2 different directions, what these losses mean in terms of these players being major contributors potentially, and what the void is. And then number 2, if there's some kind of indication as to what this means. So to take it a step further, if I hear from my Florida-based media people that come on here, they basically will tell you any kid that grew up in Florida, South Florida, shouldn't be going to Nebraska. This is going to be a trend that they're going to go to Nebraska. They're not going to like it. They're not going to be able to acclimate themselves to it. So why go up there? So we're going to see this as a trend.
Yeah. And you know what, like the more I look into it, I think the day and age of college football is just a lot different. I mean, kids are very indecisive. They're moving on a lot. You don't play one year, and a lot of kids just aren't gutting it out as much. So I think part of it has to deal with that, and part of it does have to deal with the distance. So it's finding that balance. Scott Frost still trying to create that culture inside and that winning culture at Nebraska. And when you're dealing with the winning culture, you're also trying to get those high recruits. But like Greg mentioned, it's about character too, trying to find the guys with the right character that will fit in, be team guys. A guy like Adrian Martinez, having those guys around is important. So it's finding that balance in recruiting, and it's so hard with the transfers nowadays, but it's something you just have to deal with. And as they always say, winning helps. So we'll see exactly what happens with that.
Well, I wanted to, add to that too, because I agree 100%. And, they haven't won the last 2 years, and that is hard. I mean, for an 18-year-old kid that's coming from, he's a star of his team, and his team was probably pretty good, was in the state playoffs, and they're not used to losing. And it's hard to lose. It's hard when you're on a team that's not winning. And, like I said, you don't have anything to do. Now, I've been around this coaching staff plenty when they're down in the state of Florida. We travel with the coaching staff when we go out and cover camps and stuff like that. And their presence down in the state of Florida it's heavy. They know about these guys. And there's a lot of Nebraska people down in the state of Florida. A lot of people steer kids towards Nebraska. So, I mean, it's not as hard to get a kid out of Florida as you think. Now, that's, once you do get them here, it just depends on what kind of a kid they are when they get here and how they kind of fit into the culture, because it is quite a bit of a culture shock. But if you look at some guys that are very successful, and DiCaprio Boodle, he's a Miami kid. He'd go to the wall for Nebraska. He goes back home and he tries to recruit every single kid. His little brother, I think, is a junior in high school, and they're always talking Nebraska up. So, it's just a matter of fact of getting these guys once they get here to keep them here, to get them involved and get them to like what's going on here, and winning is definitely going to help that out.
Anything else on that front?
I mean, I agree with both of you guys. I think, you can recruit these guys and get them here. And there's definitely a culture shock. And I think you got to think about Coach Frost and his philosophy too. I mean, it's hard work. When you come in, you got to work to play. And, you got to, like he says, block to get the rock. So, and it's other things too that's behind the scenes. Are you going to class? Are you showing up to team meetings? Are you punctual? And I mean, if you're not, you're probably not going to play. And it's got to be hard for a guy maybe, like Fleming, who is probably more talented than this walk-on kid that's out there getting passes thrown to him. It's got to be hard for him to see that and to know, like, I'm more talented than this guy, and coach isn't playing me. And it's because I'm not doing these different things. And if he doesn't want to, like you said, gut it out, then maybe just leaving is easier in his mind. But going back to kind of the earlier question, what does this mean? Especially at talent positions like wide receiver, Nebraska needs this depth, and they need experience in these positions to develop some type of pass game. There's just been so many talent positions, skill positions over the year that have lost guys. Like you think of Mo Washington, Tyjon Lindsey, these guys that are supposed to come in and supposed to do big things, and they're just gone for one reason or another. So Nebraska's got to find a way to keep these highly rated skill position guys around to create some offense down the road.
Talking Nebraska football with these three gentlemen. We got Greg Peterson on the line from Husker Online on Rivals, Husker Hypes, Chris Wall, and Zach Reeder from Fifth Quarter College Football. We invite you to leave your comments, your questions, your debate topics as well. So before we get on to some recruiting news, this seems to be a decent segue, talking about Florida, talking about Scott Frost, talking about his connections to Florida. I'm sure we all saw the news today that Mackenzie Milton, the UCF quarterback, has announced that he has hit the transfer portal. And I believe he had a little bit of success with Scott Frost down there. Could that be a possibility?
You know what? Nobody asked Coach Frost about that today, but I do expect that question to be coming probably Monday. He'll probably have to comment on that. But yeah, that was some big news. And he's Milton, he played for Coach Frost. He played for Coach Verduzco. So, he knows those guys very well. So yeah, why not? I'd imagine that with the success that he had under Coach Frost, that this would probably be on the top of his list right now. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, and looking into Bebo's question right there, would it be beneficial or hindering to the quarterback room? I mean, I think it's beneficial to add any guy with experience and as talented and as productive as he's been at the college level. I mean, this guy was a Heisman finalist at UCF.
Yeah.
Granted, it was at UCF.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that I actually went back and watched some of his highlights today, and he's kind of a gunslinger. Like, he loves to throw the ball downfield. He's athletic enough. He probably doesn't possess the athleticism that Adrian Martinez or Luke McCaffrey has, but his ability to get those yards when they're there in the running game and his ability to take shots downfield is something that Nebraska is missing in the passing game right now.
Yeah, and he's, I agree with that 100%. You bring in as many guys as you can because, in this day and age of college football, you got 3 good quarterbacks, 4 good quarterbacks. You're not going to be able to keep all of them. One of them's going to leave, 2 of them are going to leave. They want playing time. So, bring in as many guys as he possibly can, because you got to cover your losses.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's hard to think right now, too. Even if you didn't bring him in, is Adrian or Luke a clear starter next year? We don't know. So, I mean, even next year, if you don't bring him in, maybe one of those guys isn't even here at all. So maybe it's just down to just Luke. So I would imagine that they would at least entertain going after him, especially if he reaches out and is interested in Nebraska. It's really hard. It's really hard after the whole Burrow thing to be like, no. So I would imagine that they would go after him.
As somebody mentions in the live chat, I understand the American Conference is not the Big Ten, but 4,000 yards passing, 37 touchdowns, 9 picks, 67% completion percentage 1 year. The next year, 60%, 25 TDs, 6 picks. And there's a quarterback at Miami right now who played in the American Conference and transitioned to the ACC pretty well. I got to think he would be the best quarterback in the room if he's healthy and recovered from a devastating knee injury.
That's the scary thing. You just don't know. I mean, you look.
Well, he'd be around, and it would be 1 year. He'd have 1 year, correct? Milton would have 1 year.
I think so.
So I mean,
yeah,
I believe he would have 1 year, and that would make. I mean, this year eligibility doesn't count. So Martinez is a junior, and Luke is a redshirt freshman. So I mean, those guys still all have eligibility even after Milton is done. And I mean, I think Frost has been pretty vocal too about, in the past, like, hey, this is a guy I wouldn't mind having on my staff. So I mean, who knows down the road? He comes to Nebraska, he plays, maybe he doesn't, and then maybe he sticks around and helps coach.
And like he says, every job's up for grabs. It's a competition for every spot, every starting spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I believe he's been playing practice squad for UCF down there during their practices, and from what I've been reading, he's been doing really, really well. And they said he looks good because he's fully cleared now, but you don't know how the strength of his knee in the long run. So that's kind of the question.
Yep.
All right, Greg, we're going to tee up with some recent recruiting news from this week. What's the latest?
Well, Nebraska right now, after losing one of their commits out of this class, they're with the 18 or the 19 current commits they have. They're still looking to take about, they got about a half a dozen slots left over, and most of those targets, pretty much all of them, are all defense players. There is a wide receiver still on their list that they're looking at. But there's 2 of their targets are announcing this weekend. One of them's a 3-star. He's a defensive tackle, Mandela Tobin. He's from San Diego, and he's announcing on Friday. And the contenders are Duke, Nebraska, and Nevada. Pretty much. Most people are thinking he's probably going to go to Duke, so that would probably be one target off of the board. Then come Saturday, then Raekwon Buckley, he's a 3-star out of Minnesota. He's a defensive end. He's going on Saturday, and this is going to be between Michigan State and Nebraska. Minnesota, Florida State, and Cincinnati are all in there too. But it's probably going to be either Michigan State or Nebraska, and that one's a toss-up. So, Nebraska could be getting some good news come Saturday, but I'm not expecting Friday to be getting that commit number 20 quite yet. But after that, a lot of your remaining targets. You got corners, you got a lot of defensive linemen, you got a lot of outside linebackers. Just some names to throw out there, like Sierra Wright. He's a 4-star corner. An outside linebacker, Wyndon Honuli, 4-star. Josh Simmons, a defensive lineman. Just all kinds of these high caliber 4-star athletes still left on the board. All looking to commit here in a couple weeks here, an early signing day. And also Nebraska also did they offered a 2024 wide receiver out of Powerhouse Bellevue West here this week. Same school that Xavier Betts went to. So, he's another one of those stud receivers coming out of that program with Coach Michael Huffman there. And Iowa had already offered him, and Nebraska just jumped in there this week. Just yesterday it was, or no, a couple days ago, and got in on him early, and he's going to be another. He's probably going to be about the same size as Xavier Betts, or about 6'5", 6'6" range. So he's a guy to look at, in about 3 years. So Coach Frost getting in there early on some of the local talent.
I was going to say, Greg, when you're talking about a kid that's in the 2024 class, so he just completed his freshman season in high school.
Yep. And that's playing behind an Iowa commit, who was their stud this year, Keaton Johnson. He's heading to Iowa. His dad Clester played receiver at Nebraska and won a couple of national titles. And so his family has always been really talented. The oldest boy, CJ, played at Wyoming, and then Cade started at South Dakota State. And he's probably going to be playing on Sundays here coming up next year. And so then Keegan going to Iowa. So that program has been blessed with a lot of wide receiver talent coming in and out of there. And, you can see that program up close and personal when you're here. And, this is a guy that's going to be a national recruit. So if you don't get in on him early, you send the wrong message. So that's kind of the way recruiting is these days. You got to get out there and offer a guy that might not even play football in 3 years. So that's just the way it is these days.
Yes. So at a place like Nebraska, how many scholarship offers get pulled? Well, what's the rough percentage?
What do you mean by?
Or I shouldn't say a scholarship offer, an offer.
Oh, how many do they offer?
How many get pulled?
You mean the offers that they make that they pull back?
Yeah.
Really, that wouldn't be a real high percentage. There are guys that you just kind of lose touch with. That's why you saw the decommitment earlier this week was kind of a mutual thing because we had reached out to him. He's a Mississippi kid, and he hadn't heard from the coaching staff in months. So that kind of happens sometimes when you've got some other guys that you're kind of looking at, and a guy that you had offered early ends up committing, and sometimes that commit becomes an uncommittable type thing, and they kind of lose touch, like that kind of happened, and that kind of sometimes that points to they've got somebody else on the hook that is probably really close to committing. And there's a guy out there, a big time target that fits that bill right down the road in Omaha. Avante Dickerson, 4-star Minnesota commit, who, his best friend Kobe Bretz is a Nebraska commit, and, they're working him hard. So he's still considered a high value target right now. And that could be a reason why you see another player at that position kind of get left behind like that. But a percentage-wise, they're not usually going to pull a lot of offers. That just doesn't look good. And, so, I mean, it would be below 5%. And they're not going to go out and just offer guys just to offer them. There's going to be 5-star guys that you do that with because you have to compete with the other big boys on the block. But, they do their research. Right now, they've probably got most of their 2022 class mapped out. So, they just don't go out there and just throw offers out on the table. They're going to do their research, and they're getting, the guys that they want to get in here. And, sometimes we've seen here lately that it just doesn't work out once they do get here. But hopefully, it does.
So you guys are out there on social media, hearing from the fan base on a regular basis, on a daily basis, interacting with these people. And I'm not talking about the casual Nebraska fan or the general college football fan that just has their one dig on Nebraska, which is basically fire Scott Frost, and then they don't know anything else about it and they move on. I'm talking about real Nebraska fans that know the personnel, know the team, watch the games, keep up on it. What are they talking about? What's the chatter about? The legitimate chatter that means something?
Well, I mean, when you make that distinction between a casual fan and a real fan, the casual talk right now is like Scott Frost is on the hot seat. He's not winning. He's not the right guy for the job. If that's your opinion, then you're not very connected to this program. There's a lot of disconnect there, because if you look at things, Scott Frost is on a 6-year deal. He had a 7-year deal. He signed an extra year deal. And right now, a buyout of Scott Frost's contract during COVID, when you're not making any money, nobody in their right mind is going to make that kind of a business decision. You'd be paying for that for years. And then on top of that, Nebraska doesn't pay chicken feed to coaches. So then you're going to have to pay somebody else on top of that. So that kind of talk is out the window. Now, people have to remember that Scott Frost is only in the 5th year of being a head coach. And, there's a learning curve there. So, real fans, people that know the program, they're fine with it. They know he's the guy for the job. He's learning as he goes. But the biggest thing about this is that he knows this program. He knows this state. He knows what it takes to win. And that's the bottom line. And, he lets the kids can feel that through him. And the fans know that too. So, people that they just need to chill out a little bit and let this thing develop. Let him get 5 recruiting classes in here, and then you can see what's going to happen, because you need 5 to 6 recruiting classes to get the depth that you need to compete at a high level like this. Right now, that depth is not there. You're seeing a lot of freshmen and sophomores out there playing get thrown right into the fire because there aren't enough bodies right now, and it will come. So the general consensus is, yes, it's disappointing because they're not winning on the field, but deep down, that things are going to get better. And that's the general thought around here.
Yeah, and for me, basically what the chatter I've seen from the so-called, real fans out there that really dive deep into Nebraska, it's about what I've seen mostly is what position group is progressing and which one's regressing. Like, where are we seeing people step up and where are we seeing people get worse or not get any better? And I think you're seeing a lot of that on the defensive part. You've got an experienced secondary, which is doing their job, but you've seen the linebackers continue to get better with guys like Honus. And then the defensive line, I think, has took a big, giant step. And so I think the defense has gotten better as a whole, because I know Shenander last year was under a lot of fire about how he wasn't doing his job. But you're starting to see that defense come together. And I think, a lot of the chatter is like, who's at fault for the offense? Is it the quarterback situation, or is it the O-line, or is it the fact that we don't have any playmakers? Because everybody seems to be fighting a different battle in this on Twitter and all over. So I think really what you got to do is you got to look at the fact that all of it's not connecting. So it's part on all of the groups on the offense. It's not just single-handedly, we don't have any guys that can go make plays downfield. Adrian Martinez and McCaffrey aren't doing their jobs. They're not throwing it right, or the offensive line doesn't give them time. I think you see several plays where each position group screws up in a given game. So I think about just making adjustments and trying to get people better, using that as a learning experience through film. I think that's where you need to look at what the real fans are saying, and those are the people that really know what's going on.
And what you're saying is everything's fixable. Everything that is going wrong right now is fixable, and it will be fixed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the well-educated Nebraska fans have seen what the revolving door as far as the head coach position has done with the program, and I think realized with Frost coming into Lincoln that it was going to take a while, and now it's taken a little bit longer than everyone initially thought. So, and then back to Zach's point, I think that the true Nebraska fans also are just really honing in on that progression. Like, man, that guy, he's playing really well. He's developing really well. And if they can see that tangible progression from week to week, they're able to keep their optimism for the long run as far as Frost's tenure goes down the road.
All right, Nebraska taking on Purdue this Saturday. The Huskers trying to add to the one win that they have. Purdue's lost a couple tough ones in recent weeks. Bad pass interference call 2 weeks ago on the road at Minnesota, a game that they thought they had scored the game-winning touchdown. Then last week, in surprising fashion, against Rutgers, 37-30. So the Boilers come in also at 2-3 on the season. The Huskers again at 1-4. There was some thought that Minnesota wasn't too interested in finishing out their season. They're at 2-3, and they've got Nebraska 2 weeks from now. But PJ Fleck apparently had addressed that at his news conference to say that they were planning on playing Nebraska in 2 weeks. So how important are these last two football games? Is it one of those deals where you go out, Greg, with the mindset that, okay, we're approaching these as we would in any other year, and we're going to play the best player at every position, go out with the mindset of win the game? Or do you really just open up the roster and empty it on the field and let the young kids play and see and almost treat these as very high-level scrimmages and see who can maybe project to a 2021 impact player?
No, they're going out there to win the game. This program needs to win. They need to win out. They just for a confidence factor, and just to be able to start showing some of these young kids, some of these up and coming recruits and stuff that they're moving in the right direction. So, they're right now they're pretty much playing all the young guys anyway. So it's going to be status quo. I think the biggest question everybody wants to know always right now is who's going to play quarterback, and I think you're going to see the same thing that you saw last week. And plus, I think you're going to see Luke McCaffrey on the field at wide receiver position more too, because you need to get that guy on the field with Wan'Dale Robinson and Adrian Martinez all at the same time. You need to have two of those guys that scare the pants off of you and can run right past you if you blink your eye. So, they're going to do everything they can to win this ball game. And, this has been a tough game for Nebraska the last few years. Jeff Brom's a heck of a coach. He's a great offensive mind. And, Purdue's a hard team to stop. They're going to test you vertically. They're going to test you horizontally. They got 3 to 4 big time pass catchers. Everybody knows about Rondale Moore, and Bell. He's another stud, and you got to be able to shut down 3 or 4 guys when you're playing Purdue. You can't just shut one of them down, and that's going to be Nebraska's biggest test. And obviously, Nebraska's had trouble with a pass rush, so that's going to be a key. Is going to get to their quarterback, get a pass rush on them, and don't let them pick you apart. And then on the other side of the ball, Nebraska has been able to show that they can move the ball, but they're going to have to score in the red zone. They're going to have to score touchdowns. You're going to have to score 30, 34 points to beat Purdue because they're going to put some points up themselves. And, this is not a game where you can rely on the defense only, giving up 17, 20 points. So, it's going to be a big test for the Huskers come Saturday. And, hopefully they're up for the challenge. And I think they're going to come out on fire. And I think you're going to see, Nebraska keep doing what they've been doing as far as running the ball, trying to run the ball a lot, and throw some short passes because we're coming up against our old buddy Bob Diaco's defense that we know pretty well around here, and his kind of style of defense is kind of like a prevent, so they're not going to let you throw over the top of them, which Nebraska has proven that they can't do anyway. So this might just be falling into Nebraska's hands about what they do well and what Purdue doesn't do well. So we'll see. And, good luck to Coach Diaco in that defense. We'll see what they can do.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, what I think is that you're going to see Diaco does have that kind of prevent defense. And maybe you see him, creep up and play what most teams have been playing against Nebraska this week and try to get a little bit of pressure on them, which I think could really open up Nebraska for some big plays. But I think the 2 biggest things you mentioned, Greg, the playmakers, seeing guys like Alante Brown and Xavier Betts out there as well, with the likes of Wan'Dale Robinson and Luke McCaffrey, I think that gives you so much versatility on offense. And then switching up whatever Nebraska's been doing in the red zone, taking that red zone game plan they've had for the past few weeks, maybe throwing it in the trash, and let's start with the new one. Let's get some tempo going. Let's get some motion going because what you've been doing is not working. So I think those are the 2 biggest areas I want to see. I want to see as many, athletic people and of those extreme athletes that we've recruited on the field. And then I want to see the red zone. The red zone offense has been miserable, and maybe trying some different things out might help that.
Yeah, I agree. I think you see maybe Betts a little bit more this week, and I think going back to what Greg said, I think you're going to see Luke out there, not necessarily in that same rotation where it was kind of like a 2-on kind of rotation thing with Martinez would get 2 series, Luke would get 2, maybe that, but maybe kind of going back to what you saw against Ohio State with both Adrian and Luke out there at the same time and using Luke as a wide receiver. Defense-wise, obviously they got to shut down Rondale Moore. I think that Purdue is really good at stretching the field, especially on a short play, a 4th and 2, a 4th and 3. They're really good at just getting the ball to Wan'Dale or Rondale Moore on the outside. So I think that Nebraska's defensive, Wan'Dale. Nebraska's outside defense is going to be tested as far as their speed. So shutting it down, and like Zach said too, you got to score touchdowns and do something different in the red zone. If it's 3rd and 5 and you got the ball inside the 20, RPO handoff up the middle is just lackluster. Try something different, mix it up a little bit.
Had a question come in about Purdue's opt-outs, and I'm trying to track those down in terms of if you do a search, it's all going to be about Rondale Moore and his opt-out from 3 months ago. But so I'm trying to track down exactly what Jeff Brom had to say this week and what opt-outs Purdue has. I know Greg has addressed this question a number of times, but we'll go back to the well one more time and understanding that not everybody's here all the time, and hopefully we're gaining more viewers each and every week with 49 on the line tonight. Russell Mavis asks, curious your guys' opinion if moving to the Big Ten has hurt us in recruiting.
Yeah, I think we get this every week. It's I couldn't say it hurts us in recruiting. It's changed recruiting. It's changed where you're looking to get that talent wise, and obviously that the biggest state there is the state of Texas that Nebraska doesn't recruit as well anymore. Obviously because of the you don't play teams in that state anymore on a weekly basis, so you don't get a chance to play at home in front of your friends and family is the biggest thing. And so Nebraska has to change. They had to change the type of athlete that they were recruiting, and where those athletes are located. You kind of moved from a more of a wide open kind of a athletic style to more of a grinded out style. So, those type of athletes change the guys that are going to make you successful in that type of a league. But, Nebraska being landlocked, being in the middle of the country, is you got to be able to recruit nationally to be competitive. And, then you got to be able to recruit the high talented kids around you in Nebraska's 500-mile radius, which they do a very, very good job at doing. So yeah, you kind of you look at different areas of the country, more down south and stuff like that now, just trying to compete with your Ohio States and your Michigans and your Penn States who get a draw on a lot of those East Coast guys. So yeah, it's moved more towards the east than towards out west and stuff, but you still try to get that presence out there, and you're still trying to recruit those states. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally agree. I think it's changed it. I mean, I don't think there's really much else to hit on besides the fact that it has changed. But I wouldn't say it hurt because I mean, you still love the players, and I mean, maybe getting a guy that's instead of a low-end 4-star, he's a high-end 3-star. But it's all about development at that point and finding the right people for the spot at Nebraska.
See, right now too, I'll use the last 3 recruiting classes. In the 2019 class, Nebraska finished. This is all Rivals.com rankings. Nebraska finished 15th nationally in the Rivals point ranking, and then in the 2020 class, Nebraska finished 17th in the country, and then in this year's class, the 2021 class, which currently stands at 19 commits, they're ranked number 18 right now. So those numbers right there tell you that recruiting is not a problem right now, because you're a top 20 team in recruiting. And it's just like we've been harping on is developing that talent once you get them here on campus and keeping them here on campus.
Yeah, we made the comparison last week prior to the Iowa game that in the 4 recruiting classes that comprise the Iowa roster, they averaged out to a number 40 ranking, and the 4 classes for Nebraska comprised together as a number 20 ranked class. And Iowa was something like 38-17 in the last 4 years, and Nebraska was, I think, 22-28. Daniel Bremner, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. We appreciate that. Just simply says, great analysis. Thank you so much for that. All sorts of comments. So once you guys dove into the offensive approach, especially in the red zone.
I was going to ask, do you guys know, Zach or Greg, do you know, is Dedrick Mills definitively back this week?
Coach Frost said we have our fingers crossed today.
Right. So that might be something to look at too, is Dedrick Mills back, because our leading rushers right now are both our quarterbacks and a wide receiver. So,
well, yeah, you've been missing that, that hammer, that guy with the experience, because there is no experience right now at that position behind Dedrick Mills. And, that has definitely hurt their running game, and that's why they've had to depend on their quarterbacks to get most of their rushing yards. So yeah, I mean, just the way these injuries go, Dietrich hasn't played now in a few weeks, so hopefully, he's ready to go, and I guess we won't know until game time. But if they get Dietrich back in there, it's definitely going to help things out. Definitely help the continuity out, and let them get a chance to grind out a little bit.
Yeah, I think that would just help open up the pass a little bit more too. And then also the other thing that I forgot to mention is Purdue's leading tackler, that linebacker, he's out for the first half because of a targeting call this past week. So maybe Nebraska can jump out to a big lead with that factored in as well.
If that's number 55, I think his name's Derek Barnes. That guy can play.
He's good.
Yeah, very talented.
Okay. I didn't know who it was who led him in tackles. I just know the times that I've seen him play, Derek Barnes, 55, is a monster.
I bet that wasn't even a target. I didn't see it, but
I was surprised that they upheld it. Actually, it was very, very similar to that one that I think Dismuke had. That was not. I mean, he's had a couple though, right? But I was surprised that they upheld it, but they did. So that's a big hole, I guess, for them. So we'll see how they can try to exploit that.
Yeah, and that defense is, if you've watched them or if you've looked at how they've graded out, they've not been very good. Yeah. Really in all areas. Like their defensive line, they have Lorenzo Neal up front. He's a talented guy, possibly an NFL guy, but he's been good. But the rest of that defense, and with Barnes missing for the first half, I mean, that defense is a big question mark. So the Huskers are going to have to try to expose that. And this is where you need to see the offense take a big step.
Yep.
Greg, maybe you know who Russell is referring to here, whether Nebraska offered the kid out of Omaha West Side.
Is he talking about the quarterback, Cole Payton, who's a North Dakota State commit? I don't, or is he talking about Avante Dickerson, who does have an offer, who's committed to Minnesota? Kobe Bretz is already a Husker commit. So those are their three top guys. But Cole Payton, the quarterback, he does not have a Nebraska offer, and he's the best quarterback I've seen come out of this state in last 10 years. Better than Easton Stick, who played at North Dakota State and is a Los Angeles Charger now. Better than Noah Vedral. So he's good. And North Dakota State's getting a dandy out of him. But you never know. Nebraska comes through with an offer. He'd have to think about switching up. But definitely a talented kid if that's who he's talking about.
There's talk in Columbus and certainly concern that Michigan, with their issues and not being able to play this weekend against Maryland, won't be able to play in the game against Ohio State the next week. Minnesota, as I just mentioned, despite what PJ Fleck said, you see it all over social media in regards to, I don't know if it's a likelihood, I shouldn't phrase it that way, but speculation that Minnesota won't play its last game of the season, and maybe Ohio State and Nebraska get together for a second game.
What I've been hearing is that if there's a couple of games that get canceled that last weekend, that the Big Ten probably will try to do a little bit of matchmaking. Now, a Nebraska-Ohio State rematch does very unlikely that they would do that. It would be more likely to be like a Michigan State, Nebraska type thing. It just kind of depends on where those dominoes would fall. So yeah, it's hard to say right now, but I know that I know Jim Harbaugh came out earlier today and said that they plan on playing Ohio State next week. So, I think that's the big one right there. Minnesota, you heard what PJ Fleck also said. So it sounds to me like if everybody can stay healthy enough that I think all the games are going to go down as scheduled right now. But, like I said, the Big Ten now looks like they're flexible on trying to make something happen if need be. So we'll see. We'll see.
Big Pete has made a couple comments about Purdue having opt-outs this week. He says 8 right there. The only one that I can confirm online that's a new one that is specific to this week is wide receiver Jared Sparks, who was a guy that saw the field and caught passes his first 2 years at Purdue with 47 catches his first 2 years. But right now he's back on the depth chart with the aforementioned wide receiver talent that Greg talked about with David Bell and, of course, Rondell Moore. And I can't think of the third receiver. I think his last name's Wright. He's really good.
Yeah, White.
That Jared Sparks only caught 4 passes this year, so he's opted out. All right. Do we have predictions on this one? Chris, we'll start with you. You got a prediction on this one?
I was kind of thinking about it earlier. I'm going to take Nebraska in a close one, and I'm going to probably be right around 31-27. I think Nebraska comes out pretty hot in the first half, and then as we kind of usually see, the second half tapers off, and nothing can be easy. So in the second half, it's going to be a little bit of a battle. I think the forecast is supposed to be kind of chilly, maybe rainy, so maybe kind of a little bit lower scoring like that, and Nebraska 31-27.
Yeah, and I'm probably right along that boat. I think Nebraska's defense is going to be able to get enough stops, even with those playmakers. Inconsistent quarterback play from Purdue. And I think this is the week the offense, we've mentioned it, this is the week they have to put it together. So I'm going to believe it like I do every week, and I'm going to go 31-20, Nebraska.
Yeah, I like Nebraska's offensive chances this week as well. I think you're going to start seeing them put some things together, limit those mistakes, and I think you're going to see, like I mentioned earlier, I think you're going to see Luke McCaffrey playing a lot of skill position, being on the field a lot, and Nebraska really causing fits for that Purdue defense. So I like it. I think Nebraska, I'm going to go 35-28 Huskers.
One more time, we'll remind you that Nebraska Live is brought to you by the fine folks and Cornhusker fans there at Phone Genie. Go to ToleyBrothersLLC.com. That's Toley Brothers that provides serious germ mitigation efforts for both home and workspace use. That's ToleyBrothersLLC.com. And keep in mind that our live streams come your way only because of your contributions and also the contributions of sponsors like Toley Brothers. So thank you for that. You can get my prediction on Patreon, link down in the description section below. All right, everyone. Appreciate Greg, Chris, Zach. You guys are making this happen.
No problem.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
See everybody next week.
Sounds good.